Hello, California scholars. Got you reading Takai's book, his graphic novel on the internment camps, which is really good. I was surprised when I read it because I thought it was really good. Takai, I know him from Star Trek when I was a kid, so it's sort of pleasant to have him show himself as the activist, literary, interesting person that he is. But I'd like to show you Kevin Starr's essay here. I have this chapter from his book Embattled Dreams there for you to read, but I wanted to just help you read it and pick out the major parts of it, especially since there's a lot of reading during this week. But Embattled Dreams is by this guy Kevin Starr, who died recently, but is one of the truly comprehensive, big thinking, great historians of California. And so this is his chapter on what leads up to the internment camps, okay? And first of all is he points out this shelling. There's a submarine off the coast of California that comes here to San Diego in January, right at, the December 7th, 1941 begins World War II. By January of 1942, there's a submarine off the coast. And this is this discussion of this submarine off the coast who shells, Elwood, which is an oil area right there next to UC Santa Barbara. And he goes into that a little long, But his main point is down here. You see, this is that California had been at war with the Japanese for 40 years before this. There were just this really rough tension, and one of the interesting things is that he does this great, I love it with Starr. California had declared war on Japan, and this is a race for racial issues, but also there's a bunch of other issues that there are brought into this. And so the benefit of reading this essay is to see, how this racism played out in organizations, how it was written about, and how it actually, there's these political foundations for antagonism between Japanese and California. And then the interesting thing is that the federal government was actually trying to make better relations with Japan while California was trying to fight Japan. So, but let's get back to this. Down the Japanophile section here, this is very interesting because Starr points out that throughout America and in California there's a love of all things Japanese. People go to Japan in the late 19th century to see, and they love the architecture, and a lot of that architecture comes into what gets called craftsman architecture here in California. And so there's a Japanophile appreciation of the Japanese. But then Starr, and you can look at my little notes here, my little markings here they'll help you identify important places. But here's this guy, Edward Ross, who's a Stanford sociologist. And he is writing, here we are around 1900, and he's writing that the Japanese, Ross told the rally, were unassimilable. They cannot be assimilated into our culture. And that's because he says, because they have a very strong culture of their own that's just not going to assimilate. And then we get into a lot of San Francisco politics because it's San Francisco is going to be this leader of the antagonism against the Japanese. This guy, DeYoung, that's the DeYoung Museum, which is in Golden Gate Park. If you go to San Francisco, and then this Phelan, you'll see all sorts of stuff named after Mayor Phelan, very prominent. And then here's the San Francisco Chronicle. So San Francisco is really the center of this California's war upon Japan. Roof here is this important sort of boss, in the town. And so this is San Francisco politics here. And what happens in this section here, where I have my little star, is that this gentleman's agreement, and this is where the federal government, if the San Francisco City Board, Board of Education will back off on its antagonism to the Japanese, there'll be a gentleman's agreement where Japan will stop issuing passports, okay? And this is explained here. And so this is sort of this something to placate things. Now the picture bride thing later on is going to play into this also. Yeah, and then Hiram Johnson comes along and mentions who Hiram Johnson is. He is going to be President Roosevelt's vice presidential candidate later on, but he becomes the great racist, progressive senator from California for a long time. So lots and lots of information in here and about things. David Starr Jordan, where's David Starr? David is part of this. He's one of these Japanophiles at one level. Here he is, David. And then at the same time, Jordan's defense of Japan and the Japanese is his repugnance of the undeclared Japanese War. David Starr Jordan is the president of Stanford University. Now, okay, let's move along here. And yes, there's a lot of stuff here. Since you're reading the other book, you don't have to spend too much time with this, but this becomes very interesting here too. And that's a book, see, it's written in 1909, in which there's this argument, which is that the Japanese are going to attack California. So in the background of this is that we have to understand that this paranoia of the Japanese did not, especially the military, didn't just spurt out of the ground in January and February of 1942. There'd actually been 40 years. This is Starr's point. There'd been 40 years of this building racism, but then also the recognition that Japan was becoming this militaristic society. Japan had created alliances with Germany, and German industrialism and German war machinery was coming into Japan. And so you have this first third of this book is that war between Japan and the United States is inevitable. Okay. And then the middle third of the book is that Japan's military capabilities on land and sea are growing and that they're powerful. And then the final third of the book here is and sketches out a scenario of a Japanese overthrow, a Japanese strategy for overthrow of California. So this is 1909, you see, and so there's California, especially San Francisco, had been sort of seething in this for a long time. Now, let's go down to, there's the picture brides stuff. This is fun. How it's sort of like a early social media about how to get a bride, because you have this. You can't just get a passport to come to California if you're a woman. You got to be married to someone, and so they would do these picture bride things. But I wanted to 55. Where's 55? Yeah, here. This is a nice section here where it talks about what the Japanese are actually doing in California and these different Japanese forms of Buddhism that are here in California. Soka University, which is right up in Aliso Viejo, just north of us, is a Japanese university built upon Buddhist principles of Soka Gakkai, which is a type of Buddhism which emphasizes pacifism in the extreme, and it came out of the World War II. These were Japanese Buddhists who didn't go along with the war machine. And after the war, the Soka Gakkai has risen up as a major form of Japanese Buddhism in the world. So in the end, we get to let's get to the conclusion, which is always good. Read these conclusions. Is after 50 years of trying, white Californianists, I like that, white Californianists, not Californians, Californianists, so these people who are very concerned about of creating a California, at long last had a California emptied of Japanese. So it's, here again, the main theme of this article is just to recognize that what Takai is talking about in his book is something that had been around for a long time. It doesn't just result from the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor.